Okay, so let's now try a new project. First, we have a blank default perspective. The perspectives are shown up here in the corners. Perspectives are simply organizations of various windows. So in this case, today we have a C and C++ perspective, and there is also a debug perspective that we switch to whenever we're debugging. So a new project, it's straightforward. We go File, New, and then we get to use one of these wizards to start a new project. We'll start with a Bareboard project. Give it a name, K20 Bareboard. And it'll go into this workspace we created earlier, we were using, and that's just an area that we're using. We click Next and pick Kinetis. It's a K20, and it's a K20 50Mhz family, and specifically it is this K20 DX128. That's something you'll double check with whichever development board you have. In the case of the tower system, the DX128 is the part that is on it by default. So now we click Next, and we choose which connection is being used, and that's really Eclipse's name for a debugger. By default, the P&E USB multi-link is selected. The onboard debugger is actually OSJTag. So I'm going to just turn off P&E, turn on OSJTag. A lot of people also have the J-Link, the yellow J-Link that comes with IAR or Seger tools. And we click Next. The languages we're going to be using are C. There's no hardware floating point. Go to Next. Are we going to use any rapid application development, such as device initialization or processor expert? So for now, let's choose device initialization. We'll go Next. And if we have already had C files we wanted to add to our project at this point, we would search for them here by clicking this Add button. And then there's a few options whether we want to copy those files into the project or just use them where they happen to be. Generally, if you want everything encapsulated, you might want to copy them over. And here's whether it should make a default main.c file. And that's it. We click Finish. And Eclipse will prepare a basic development environment. This is some background action. And now it's done. So here's our project, K20 Bareboard. And under Sources, we'll see main.c and an MCU in it. So this was the initialization code that was generated automatically for us. And we can see some, I'll maximize that. We can see that it was generated by the tool, do not modify it, and at the moment it just calls this MCU init function. Our main.c here, I'll make that big, is a simple counter that's going to go around in a loop. Okay, so now what we'll do is we want to build, and we click on this hammer icon. We can actually, this little drop down says whether we want to build the two targets. One is a RAM to run out of RAM, and one is to run out of flash. So we'll just pick the RAM target since it'll be quicker to download. Okay, so it built, and then we can debug it. If you want, you can, this drop down arrow says debug as CodeWarrior download. And CodeWarrior automatically switches to the debug perspective. Okay, and it does take a little bit to initialize, and now it's ready to go. So what we'll do, I had to plug in my development board, and once it did, it downloaded the code. and it's ready to start here at main. So I'm going to put a breakpoint. This is main.c. Here's the main function. I'm going to go to this counter and double click in this blue area to set a breakpoint. Okay, now if I run, sorry, not this run, it's up here. This run. Resume F8. This does a device reset, this does a resume, this terminates or stops. When it's running, you can pause it wherever it is. Here are your stepping commands: step into, step over, return from a function. So I'm going to go resume, and as you see, our project stops at the counter because it hit the breakpoint. We can see the counter value up here. If we run it again, the counter is incremented. Okay, I can also press F8 to keep running. That's a very basic project and getting started with CodeWarrior 10.2.